We have breaking news out of Israel this morning where Hamas has launched a surprise attack.
This extraordinary series of attacks began at 6:30 in the morning when Israel was asleep.
This is an unprecedented surprise attack on Israel, the likes of which this country has not seen since the Yom Kippur War.
Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has declared a state of war with Hamas.
Israeli airstrikes on Gaza have already triggered a mass displacement and killed more than 1,500 Palestinians since Saturday.
Israel has pounded Gaza from the air since Hamas's bloody attack on the weekend, the deadliest by Palestinian militants in its history.
Israeli ground forces are now pushing deeper into the southern part of the Gaza Strip, with their sights set on the city of Khan Yunis. The IDF hitting Hamas targets from the sky.
But the military saying it plans to capture or kill all of Hamas's leaders.
The horrific revelations coming out of the Hamas terror dungeons, with at least 20 hostages murdered.
On October 7, 2023, Hamas launched a surprising and coordinated attack across Israel's borders in the south. The attack began at around 6:30 a.m., with a massive barrage of over 2,200 rockets fired into Israel in under 20 minutes. Simultaneously, at least 1,500 Hamas gunmen infiltrated Israel at numerous locations, using explosives and bulldozers to break through the heavily fortified border. These militants disabled communications at several Israeli military posts, enabling them to attack these facilities and enter civilian neighborhoods without detection. Others penetrated the maritime border by motorboat, and some entered Israel on motorized paragliders. The assault, widely regarded as an act of terrorism, tragically claimed over 1,500 Israeli lives, including families in their homes in kibbutzim and attendees at an outdoor music festival. This attack, primarily targeting Israeli civilians and some foreign nationals, marked this day as the deadliest for Jews since the Holocaust. Additionally, over 240 individuals were kidnapped and taken to the Gaza Strip as hostages. Many were taken from their homes in the music festival, and more than half of the hostages held passports from approximately 24 countries, drawing multiple nations into the efforts for their release. At 8:23 a.m. on October 7th, the IDF declared a state of war and started mobilizing its army reserves, eventually calling up more than 350,000 reservists in the subsequent days. Amidst the verses of Islamic Hadith, a foreboding prophecy echoes through the ages, woven into the charter of Hamas. It speaks of a time yet to unfold, when fate and faith converge. It tells of a final hour, when Muslims will unite in a sacred jihad against the Jews. The passage reads, "The day of reckoning will not begin until you fight the Jews, until a Jew will hide behind a rock or a tree, and the rock or tree will say, 'O Muslim, O slave of Allah, here is a Jew behind me, come and kill him.'" Saliently found within the opening pages of their 1988 charter, it embodies the convictions of an estimated 25,000 Hamas members in the Gaza Strip and West Bank. Hamas, known officially as the Islamic Resistance Movement, is a Sunni Islamist organization with a multifaceted mandate, encompassing both political and military objectives. This group governs the Gaza Strip, a narrow coastal region located along the eastern coast of the Mediterranean Sea. Bordered by Israel to the north and east, and Egypt to the south, the Gaza Strip constitutes a significant portion of the Palestinian territories. Characterized by its dense population and limited land area, Gaza has been a focal point of various political and territorial disputes. The inception of Hamas dates to the First Palestinian Intifada, a tumultuous period marked by extensive protests and violent resistance by Palestinians against Israeli military presence in the West Bank and Gaza Strip. This movement arose as a response to long-standing tensions and conflicts in the region, reflecting deep-seated political, territorial, and cultural disputes. The First Intifada precipitated in December 1987, following a collision between an Israeli Defense Forces truck and a civilian car, resulting in the deaths of 4 Palestinian workers. This event was perceived by Palestinians as a deliberate act of retaliation for an earlier killing of an Israeli. Amid this volatility, 3 influential leaders, Abdul Aziz al-Rantizi, Sheikh Ahmed Yassin, and Salah Shehada, were pivotal in galvanizing the population to confront Israeli forces. During the escalation of these protests, Hamas was established by al-Rantizi and Yassin.
The Palestinian elections had a stunning outcome, a landslide victory for Hamas. Official results today showed the Islamic militant group swept the long-ruling Fatah party out of power. Hamas has called for Israel's destruction, but it offered today to continue a year-old truce.
Interestingly, the Israeli administration initially viewed Hamas favorably. It is speculated that Israel's endorsement was aimed at creating a counterbalance to Yasser Arafat and the Palestinian Liberation Organization. However, the relationship between Israel and Hamas would soon deteriorate. In the spring of 1989, Hamas's first major confrontation with Israel was marked by the abduction and killing of 2 Israeli soldiers, Avi Sisportas and Ilan Sidon. The discovery of Sisportas's body led to a robust Israeli response, with the arrest of key Hamas figures, including Yassin and Yahya Sinwar. Yahya Sinwar was known for his role in the military wing of Hamas, and his arrest was part of Israel's effort to dismantle the operational capabilities of the organization. Subsequently, Hamas decentralized its command, making its operations more elusive. This restructuring was partly in response to the Al-Aqsa massacre in October 1990, where Israeli security forces used live ammunition against Palestinians at the Al-Aqsa compound, resulting in 17 Palestinian deaths. The incident was a reaction to attempts by Jewish Orthodox extremists to lay a foundation stone for the Third Temple at the Temple Mount, an event that became infamously known as Black Monday. Hamas then declared all Israeli soldiers as legitimate targets, calling for jihad against Israel. The organization merged several units to form the military wing, the Al-Qassam Brigades. Yehia Ayash, an engineering graduate known for his bomb-making skills, led this wing. Ayash played a crucial role in introducing suicide bombings into Hamas tactics. In December of '92, following the killing of an Israeli border police officer, Israel deported 415 members of Hamas to southern Lebanon. In Lebanon, Hamas forged ties with Hezbollah and learned advanced bomb-making techniques. In April of '94, a suicide bombing at a bus stop killed 8 Israelis and injured over 30. A week later, another bombing on a bus resulted in 5 Israeli deaths and 30 injuries. Hamas claimed responsibility for both attacks. Then, 6 months later, in October, a bus bombing in Tel Aviv killed an additional 22 Israelis and injured 45. On January 5, 1996, Yahya Ayyash was assassinated in a covert operation by Israeli intelligence. The assassination was executed through an ingeniously disguised explosive device hidden within a mobile phone. When Ayyash answered a call on the phone, the explosive was remotely detonated, leading to his immediate death.
If it's true that one of the world's most vicious killers, a person who's been responsible for blowing up women and children and babies, has been eliminated, I don't think anyone should shed a tear of sorrow. I think equally that it's important to send a message, and I think such a message has been sent to all his followers, all would-be terrorists, that Israel's long arm would reach them, that there is a price for terrorism.
גם גופה אחרת ישנה שם. לפי מקורות פלסטיניים טעון אישור זו גופתה של אישה.
The killing of Ayyash triggered a series of retaliatory attacks by Hamas and escalated the ongoing tensions. Ayyash's funeral in Gaza attracted nearly 100,000 mourners. In September of 1997, Benjamin Netanyahu authorized an operation to assassinate Khaled Mashal, a leading figure in Hamas. Israeli Mossad agents, using false Canadian passports, carried out the assassination attempt. The operatives approached Mashal on a street in Amman, Jordan, and applied a nerve agent by spraying it onto his ear. However, the agents were captured by Jordanian authorities almost immediately after the attack, causing a significant diplomatic incident between Israel and Jordan, a country that had only recently signed a peace treaty with Israel. The aftermath of the failed assassination saw King Hussein exert intense pressure on Israel. He demanded the provision of an antidote for the nerve agent to save Mashal's life. Additionally, he demanded the release of Sheikh Ahmed Yassin. Faced with a diplomatic crisis and the potential collapse of the peace agreement with Jordan, Israel complied with both demands. The antidote for the nerve agent saved Mashal's life, and Sheikh Yassin was released and returned to Gaza, where he was greeted with a hero's welcome. This event significantly boosted Yassin's and Hamas's stature among Palestinians, and was seen as a diplomatic failure for Israel, complicating its international relations and its ongoing conflict with Hamas. The onset of the Second Intifada in September 2000 was marked by intense violence, with mass demonstrations and forceful Israeli counterinsurgency methods. By July 2001, nearly a year into the conflict, a staggering 86% of Palestinians reportedly supported violent actions against Israelis, and Hamas's backing had increased to 17%. This surge in unrest stemmed from the failed 2000 Camp David summit, which had aimed to finalize the Israeli-Palestinian peace process. Ariel Sharon's visit to the Al-Aqsa compound on the Temple Mount in Jerusalem in September 2000 acted as a catalyst for the Intifada, triggering widespread protests and riots. The death toll from the violence included approximately 3,000 Palestinians, 1,000 Israelis, and over 60 foreign nationals. Among various militant groups, Hamas stood out for their military-style assaults and suicide bombings targeting Israeli civilians and military. By the end of the 5-year conflict, nearly 5,000 Palestinians and over 1,000 Israelis had been killed. Suicide attacks, particularly those orchestrated by Hamas, accounted for over half of all Israeli casualties during this period, with Hamas being responsible for around 40% of the 135 suicide attacks. On June 8, 2003, Abdel Aziz al-Rantizi led a Hamas attack at the Erez checkpoint in the Gaza Strip, killing 4 Israeli soldiers. Just 2 days later, Rantizi narrowly escaped an Israeli helicopter strike on his car, which resulted in the death of his bodyguard and a civilian. In June of 2003, following a suicide bombing in Jerusalem that resulted in 17 deaths and over 100 injuries, Israeli forces retaliated, killing 2 senior Hamas members and 4 others. 3 months later, in September, an Israeli F-16 attacked a building in Gaza City where Yassin was present, but he survived. Israeli officials later confirmed that Yassin had been the target. Yassin publicly stated that the assassination attempts would not deter Hamas, emphasizing their commitment to martyrdom and continued resistance. However, in March 2004, Yassin was assassinated by an Israeli helicopter gunship in Gaza City, as he was returning from morning prayers. The attack also killed his bodyguards and 9 bystanders. Abdul Aziz al-Rantizi succeeded Yassin as the leader of Hamas in Gaza. In the 2006 Palestinian Authority legislative elections, Hamas achieved a landslide victory with 76 seats. International observers deemed the elections competitive and democratic. Several Arab countries and the Arab League suggested that the U.S. should engage with Hamas, arguing against penalizing Palestinians for their democratic choice. This period saw escalating tensions between the PLO and Hamas militants, particularly as PLO commanders resisted the new government's directives. This friction manifested in a series of demonstrations, assassinations, and abductions by the Palestinian Authority against Hamas. Israeli intelligence allegedly warned Mahmoud Abbas, head of the PLO, of a potential assassination plot by Hamas, perceiving him as an impediment to their control over the Palestinian Authority. Hamas leader Mohammed Nasser criticized Abbas for his role in isolating the Hamas-led government. The political landscape remained fraught with tension as the PLO and Hamas continued their power struggle. In June 2006, during an Israeli military operation, a devastating explosion occurred on a Gaza beach, resulting in 8 Palestinian casualties. Although initial assumptions pointed to Israeli artillery as the cause, Israeli officials denied responsibility. In response to this incident, on June 10, Hamas ended its 6-month ceasefire and resumed Qassam rocket attacks into Israel. The situation further escalated on June 25, when 2 Israeli soldiers were killed, and another, Gilad Shalit, was captured during an operation by Hamas. The Popular Resistance Committees and the Army of Islam joined in response to Gilad Shalit's capture, leading the Israeli military to initiate Operation Summer Rains 3 days later, aimed at securing Shalit's release. This operation resulted in the arrest of 64 Hamas officials, including 8 Palestinian Authority cabinet ministers and about 20 members of the Palestinian Legislative Council, disrupting the functioning of the Hamas-dominated legislature. Shalit remained captive until 2011 when he was released in exchange for over 1,000 Palestinian prisoners. In June of 2008, Egyptian mediators announced an informal truce between Hamas and Israel, with Hamas agreeing to stop rocket attacks on Israel, and Israel agreeing to increase commercial shipping across the Gaza border. In March 2012, Mahmoud Abbas announced that Hamas and the PLO had no political differences, having agreed on a joint political platform and a truce with Israel. In an Al Jazeera interview, Abbas mentioned their agreement for calm in both Gaza and the West Bank, a commitment to peaceful resistance against Israel, the establishment of a Palestinian state within the 1967 borders, and the condition that peace talks would continue if Israel stopped settlement construction and met their conditions. In 2013, despite weeks of indirect diplomacy involving representatives from Hamas, Israel, and the Palestinian Authority, no substantial agreement was reached. Palestinian reconciliation talks stalled, and during President Obama's visit to Israel in 2014, Hamas launched 5 rocket strikes on Israel. In response to the kidnapping and murder of 3 Israeli teenagers, and increased rocket fire from Gaza, Israel initiated Operation Protective Edge. This conflict, lasting 7 weeks, ended with a permanent ceasefire, but resulted in over 2,000 casualties and more than 10,000 wounded. In 2018, Hamas participated in the Great March of Return, a series of demonstrations along the Gaza-Israel border. These protests, held every Friday, resulted in the deaths of at least 183 Palestinians, predominantly due to the use of live ammunition by the Israeli Defense Forces, in response to what they claimed were violent riots and attempts to breach the border fence. In May of 2021, tensions escalated in East Jerusalem and at the Al-Aqsa Mosque, leading to renewed hostilities between Israel and Hamas. The conflict, sparked by issues around potential evictions of Palestinians in East Jerusalem, quickly escalated into an 11-day exchange of rocket fire from Hamas and airstrikes by Israel. This conflict resulted in over 200 deaths in Gaza and 12 in Israel. The period following this conflict saw a tense but mostly calm situation between Israel and Hamas. Despite a lull in violence, underlying issues remained unresolved, leading to occasional skirmishes and unrest, without major escalation. This uneasy calm was abruptly disrupted by Hamas's unexpected assault on Israel in October 2023. In the weeks following Hamas's assault on southern Israel, tensions escalated rapidly, leading to a series of confrontations and military responses. Israel intensified its airstrikes targeting Hamas infrastructure and militant positions in Gaza, while Hamas continued to launch rocket attacks into Israeli territory. On October 27, the IDF launched a large-scale ground incursion into northern Gaza. Next, on November 22, Israel's war cabinet agreed to a deal with Hamas. In this agreement, Hamas would release 53 hostages in exchange for about 150 Palestinian prisoners held by Israel, alongside a 4-day ceasefire. The deal included provisions for the release of additional hostages and prisoners after this period and the potential extension of the initial ceasefire. The truce expired in the morning on December 1st, as both Israel and Hamas blamed each other for failing to agree on an extension. On December 8th, Israeli forces entered Khan Yunis, reporting the most violent fighting in the entire war, with the Israeli 7th Armored Brigade engaged in a multi-hour attack on Palestinian militias. Al-Qassam brigades displayed a shift to more sophisticated battle tactics, including rigging houses to detonate when entered by Israeli soldiers. The Israeli army has suffered heavy casualties during the current invasion. As of December 11th, 104 soldiers have been killed in action and more than 559 have been injured. In a single episode, the targeting of an armored personnel carrier with anti-tank missiles killed 9 IDF soldiers instantly. Additionally, over 7,000 Hamas combatants have been killed since Israel's ground invasion into Gaza. The October 7th attack by Hamas elicited widespread global condemnation and was denounced as an act of terrorism against civilians by many countries, including Western nations as well as India, Japan, and South Korea. Some foreign ministries, particularly from several Arab countries, as well as Turkey, Russia, and China, refrained from specifically condemning Hamas, instead urging restraint on Israel's part. There are also concerns about the potential expansion of the war into a larger regional conflict. In the shadow of these harrowing events, the world stands at a crossroads, witnessing a conflict that weaves a complex narrative of pain, loss, and resilience. As the dust settles, each life lost becomes a silent testament to the fragility and value of peace, a reminder of the collective responsibility to foster understanding and seek solutions that bridge divides, rather than widen them.